Friday, February 13th. Let's talk PlayStation. Kicking it off with our first news story. The online servers for Resistance Retribution are being shut down. Now, this is actually a PSP game, launched back in 2009. Not necessarily a big news story, probably doesn't pertain to many of you people, but I saw this and I was like, I missed that game. That was a really good game. It was really good looking for the PSP, by the way. It was a really good looking game. But yeah, that's going to be shut down May 5th, so if you are actually still playing that game online, you might want to keep playing it a little bit more because it will be shut down soon. Alright, moving on to our next news story. During a media conference, EA CFO Blake Jorgensen, I think I said his name right, discussed the possibilities of Titanfall 2 and the possibilities of it coming to PlayStation 4. Now, this is one of those things where he didn't directly say it, didn't actually say the words PS4 at all, but it's, you know, you deal with this stuff all the time, and it's PR statements, it's very wordy situations. You know, in the games industry, this is a very big thing. How you choose your words carefully, because it can be misconstrued and carried around everywhere, especially with like timed exclusives, for example. They, you know, interviews and everything get very wordy there, like how Tomb Raider has a duration apparently and everything. But basically, what Jorgensen said is that more than likely they're going to have a bigger footprint in terms of platforms when they possibly do Titanfall 2. The only other, you know, he specifically said, you know, we had it on Xbox only and PC, so we would have it on more platforms. The only other platform is PlayStation 4, because clearly Wii U is not the kind of platform that would typically see a release of Titanfall 2 or a shooter or, you know, games like that. It's pretty obvious, right? So we will more than likely see Titanfall 2, and we've discussed Titanfall a number of times on the show, even back when, you know, Titanfall was possibly going to be a timed exclusive, which it totally was going to be until EA sealed that deal and everything. Whole big scenario, so it looks like that's all getting cleared up possibly, but we'll have to wait and see until EA formally announces Titanfall 2. So a really big news story this past week just happened, totally awesome. I cannot believe Sony's actually doing this. It's about damn time. If you have a PlayStation Network sub account, it can now finally be upgraded to a master account. So for nearly, what, 8-9 years, if you had a sub account on PlayStation Network, you know, where you're, say, underage, say you're like 14, 15 or something, you know, you make a sub account, there's a master account that is controlling purchases and everything. When you rolled over into age 18, you were still stuck with a sub account, meaning you couldn't do a number of things that a master account did, and if you wanted to do what a master account did, you basically had to create a new PSN ID, lose all your trophies, your friends list, everything like that, right? So now it's finally, this issue is finally fixed. Finally, if you have a sub account, it can go be upgraded to a master account. Very easy process from what I've read. You just go to Sony Entertainment Network, I believe, .com, log into PSN. It will basically just give you the option right there. Just click to upgrade, I guess. I assume. And you can just graduate right to a master account, have master account privileges. All your trophies and your friends list and everything carries over, so you don't lose anything. And that was the whole big thing, the big problem with this. And, you know, it's crazy that something like this was a problem for so long. So, you know, better late than never, but yeah, finally. This was a big thing. Now, I personally never had a problem with this, but this and PSN name changes were like two big things that people have always been asking for, and it's like, why aren't you doing it? Finally got one of them out of the way. Now let's see PSN name changes. I have to imagine they're coming at some point. Sony is always there. They always acknowledge it, but they will never say if it's actually coming or not. They always say it's a problem, but, you know, it's more harder than it appears to be, but we'll just have to take their word for it. But, you know, sometimes you just can't do that, so hopefully soon. So honestly, there's not a whole lot of super specific PlayStation news stories going around. We you know, I only do like 4 or 5 news stories on the show, some of the biggest news stories of the past week. So there's this image going around of like Ratchet and Clank, an image of Ratchet and Clank, the new reboot coming to PS4, but there's like no sources to it, so I'm not going to talk about that. I won't talk about a news story unless there's at least a good amount of sources or, you know, viability to it or what have you, just to fill you in on that. So one big talking point I wanted to bring up for this episode of Let's Talk PlayStation is Wedbush Securities' Michael Pachter. You should know Michael Pachter. He's been in the games industry for a long time, does tons of crazy interviews, says a lot of crazy things. A lot of people slam this guy because he says a lot of, you know, out there situations. Like one time he was quoted as saying PS3, 360, and we would be the last console generation. Clearly he was wrong about that. He's been wrong about a lot of things. But, you know, people love to slam the guy, but he does say a lot of intelligent things sometimes. He's very, you know, hit and miss. He does get things right sometimes, and that's why he gets paid the big bucks. But one interesting thing he did say this past week, which was totally true, which is what I want to talk about, is he was interviewed by Game Informer, and he was discussing a number of things, you know, like Wii U, Sony, Microsoft. But one thing he was discussing is the possible, like, how much Sony wants to win and how much Microsoft wants to win in terms of the console war. Now, I don't like to get into this too often, but I like to talk about the very business side of things, how the certain companies operate and everything. And what's interesting about what he said, and I totally agree with him, is that if you asked Microsoft how much they want to win, Microsoft guys would answer, hell yes, we want to win. Hell yes, we want to sell more Xbox Ones. Hell yes, we want to, even if they sell a good amount of Xbox Ones, even if they do well, performance-wise in terms of sales and everything, they sell a lot of software or whatnot, Microsoft guys would always answer that question saying, hell yes, we want to win. Whereas if you were to ask Sony the same question, Sony wouldn't mind coming in second, for example. Like, Sony wouldn't mind not coming out on top. They would be happy if they sold, say 150 million systems or something. They would be happy if they sold a lot of software. They would be happy if they made a profit on hardware, if they just were a profitable company and being profitable in their business, which is video games, right? And those are two very distinctive things, I think. I totally agree with this, by the way, because that is totally true, because you can look at both business strategies of these companies. And you can clearly look at how they operate. And if you've been watching the show for a while now, I've told you guys about this through a number of different key news stories, which is when Sony operates, how Sony typically operates. They like to buy a lot of developers. They like to fund a lot of games that don't necessarily get a lot of attention. Games like Heavy Rain or Flower, Flow, Journey with that game company, like the 3-game situation they had there. Supermassive Games, what's that one game called? The Swan game. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm forgetting what it's called right now. Heavy Rain, where they're working with Quantic Dream a lot. Puppeteer on PS3. No one even knows about that game, and it's an incredibly good game. That was from Sony Japan Studio. Sony likes to focus on creating a lot of original ideas. And that's not to slam Microsoft anyway. Microsoft's very aggressive in terms of how they operate. They like to buy third-party exclusives. They do this a lot, and it's interesting actually, because recently it seems like Sony's the one that's doing that. They've been they got Street Fighter V and everything, so it's interesting that Sony's kind of changing that strategy up a little bit. But for the most part, in Sony's history, they always buy developers and fund original ideas and everything. On the Microsoft side, you see them pushing very heavy for exclusive content, and it's always mostly third-party stuff. I mean, they have their own original names, and they bought Gears of War last year, the IP for that, or was it 2013? But either way, they bought the Gears of War IP, so that's strictly theirs now. They don't do this often, but they're very heavy with the Call of Duty expansion packs and everything, getting that exclusive deal, so the maps always land on Xbox first. The Tomb Raider deal, obviously, the Titanfall deal, Sunset Overdrive is another one, and of course, back in the 360 days, they had tons of stuff like this, tons of exclusive maps. It seems like throughout all of that generation versus 360 and PS3, PlayStation people were always the fan base getting kind of shafted by most third-party games because of a number of reasons. Not only was the PS3 difficult to develop for, so sometimes you were getting the lesser quality version of a game, but Microsoft was partnering with the developer, so Microsoft side you'd always get more maps, exclusive mission or something. There was a GTA missions. Granted, a lot of that stuff is timed exclusive, so it came to PlayStation at some point, but there wasn't a whole lot of third-party exclusive stuff on PlayStation until or PlayStation 3, excuse me, till near the very end of the system's life cycle, where PS3 was really starting to flourish. One of the earliest ones I can remember is Unreal Tournament 3. Unreal Tournament 3 came out on PlayStation 3 first, and it launched on 360 6 to 8 months later or something. That was one of the few examples I can think of. There's probably others, but just off the top of my head. But looking at both of them, both companies and how they operate, I really agree with that sentiment of what Michael Pachter said, which is if you ask these two companies the same question, you get two very different answers. Is that Microsoft really does want to win. They really do. And whereas Sony is I don't know, I wouldn't say more humble, but they would totally be fine with coming in second and just selling well, right? And just being profitable and I guess staying alive in the business. I don't know, I can't really speak for Sony, and I can't necessarily speak for Microsoft, but if you follow these companies for a long time, you read lots of interviews from the guys that have worked at both these companies, you can kind of judge from you can kind of get a sense and feel for how they operate, like I've said. Those are really all the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. There's still lots of other crazy stuff going on. If you'll notice, I don't do too many third-party news stories. One big news story this past week was Bethesda is going to be holding a press conference at E3. That's like a pretty huge that's a big news story, because Bethesda having enough content to apparently plan a conference at E3 means they are more than likely going to announce something pretty big, like probably Fallout 4 or something. So, you know, third-party stuff does happen, but you guys know that it's Let's Talk PlayStation, so I do cover, like, PlayStation news stories. Anyway, for people that watch the Let's Play videos I do, you're probably wondering where the new one is. I decided to actually wait and do the Order 1886, so I have to wait for the game to actually come out, and I'll do a blind Let's Play of it, because a couple of people have been asking me to do, like, a blind Let's Play. I don't do many of those often. I did do one for The Last of Us and Beyond Two Souls when they came out, and Knack. So, I do it sometimes, and I guess I'll do it soon with the Order. And I'll review the Order as well, so... because that's like a pretty big... I want to at least review, like, big PlayStation exclusives, obviously. I'm trying to find more time to make videos, so... that's about it. Anything else? Oh, just to throw it in your face. I'm not very good at games often. Like, of course I love to play games, but like I'm never like good at them, ironically, despite the fact that I have a lot of trophies, but I usually suck at most games. But Super Stardust Ultra just came out on PS4, and that's one of the few games, one of the few arcadey games I'm super good at. Like, I fucking destroy that game. So when that game came out on Tuesday, I had a 2-hour-long arcade session on that game. And when I finished and when I finally ran out of all my lives, I was number 3 on the leaderboards. I was like, oh my god, no fucking way, dude. Number 3 on the leaderboards. That doesn't happen to me often, but that's of course the game like just came out. So when you have one skilled player jumping on the game right when it comes out, because it's basically the same game from PS3, just with all the modes packed in and everything. That's how I got to number 3. But I checked it the other night, and now I'm at like 6. I'll probably keep going lower and lower and lower, because actually I didn't even beat my PS3 high score. On Super Stardust HD on PS3, my score was like 350 million. That's like my high score in that game, and the session I did on Super Stardust Ultra, I got like 240 million. 240 million I think? 290 million? I don't know, but yeah, I couldn't even beat my PS3 high score, and that's how high I got in the leaderboard. That was pretty awesome. That doesn't happen to me often. Okay, I guess I'm done being kind of a douchebag. Yeah, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you guys so much for talking with me. I'll see you guys all next Friday.